didn't know what I wanted to do when I finished school. I guess I've always been really curious about the world, so I decided to start a science degree, and I took a psychology undergraduate course and I absolutely loved it. So that sort of led me down the path into psychology, and I thought, I'll go and I'll be a psychologist. I think it's what a lot of people think when they first study psychology. And then I became really interested in research. So I did a research project in my 4th year of study, and I really liked the kind of creative aspect to it. I really liked the gathering of data, and I really liked the idea of informing knowledge and furthering knowledge based on kind of research projects. So I decided to actually go down both paths. I did some training in clinical psychology as a psychologist, and I also did a PhD looking at kind of cognitive impairments and kind of cognitive characteristics of people who experience depression. I did a lot of clinical work at that time as well, and I guess something that I noticed, I went overseas and I practiced for a couple of years and did some more research, and I noticed that people who have kind of a lifelong history of depression really didn't have access to the kinds of interventions and treatments that they needed when they first experienced illness. So I did a lot of interviews with people, say middle-aged, and they had 20 to 30-year histories of chronic depression. And just hearing about their childhood, hearing about their schooling, hearing about kind of early, their adolescent years, which is when most often people typically start to see these sorts of problems. Just hearing about the lack of services available, the lack of treatments available, really led me down this idea of looking at prevention and early intervention. I guess personally, I really enjoy working with young people, and I find that working with young people when they are experiencing maybe their first episode of depression and anxiety, you get a lot better bang for your buck in terms of being able to help them and get to them early before they kind of have these ingrained patterns of thinking, and there's a spiral that can occur, and getting in earlier actually gives them like a better prognosis throughout life. So that for me is why I became interested in working with young people. My work is mostly with adolescents, so the sort of 12 to young adults, 12 to 25-year-old adolescents and young adults, both kind of in schools, in the community, and also university students as well, and looking at ways that we can reduce the risk of mental illness and then treat mental illness early on, so depression and anxiety when it first starts to emerge. There's one area which I think is kind of really developing momentum is the role of sleep as a risk factor for the onset of mental health problems. Everyone can relate to having a poor night's sleep. We all need to do it every day, and it can be really difficult for people who experience prolonged chronic difficulty sleeping or insomnia. And what we know from the research is actually experiencing sleep problems significantly increases your risk of experiencing, say, depression and anxiety subsequently. Doesn't mean that if you're a poor sleeper you will, but it does increase risk. And what that means for us is if we can look at sleep and help young people sleep better and kind of establish, healthy sleeping patterns early on in life, that's going to reduce their risk of mental illness. So that's an area that I'm really passionate about. I'm very curious. There's so much about sleep we don't understand yet, but looking at ways to really help young people establish positive sleeping habits and good sleeping patterns, and being able to bounce back or recover from an all-nighter, staying up studying, nights out with friends. Adolescence is such a, exciting time, but it also can be really disruptive to what we call a circadian rhythm, so your natural sleep-wake cycle. So looking at things that we can do to help young people get a better night's sleep, which in turn will reduce their risk of mental illness. Over the last few years, I've been running some research looking at ways that we can improve young people's sleep. And one way that we can do that is actually through digital intervention. So before I started, there was nothing available on the market in Australia. And what we did is we developed this app. It's based on cognitive behaviour therapy for insomnia. It's free to download, so you can go to Google Play or the App Store and take a look. And it's basically 6 short sessions, 5 to 10 minutes each, where you learn sleep skills and strategies to have healthy sleep patterns. So there's some stuff around sleep scheduling. It's really good to get up at the same time each morning if you can, and go to bed without too much variability in the time that you go to sleep. It's really important to get exposure to bright light in the morning. There's also some stuff in there about how to manage worries that might keep you awake at night. I think we all can relate to being in bed and tossing and turning and starting to get worried that you're not getting to sleep and all the things that you need to do the next day. So there's some really helpful skills and strategies in there for how you can kind of calm your mind and your body and get it ready for sleep each night. The first thing that I want to say is Sleep Ninja is not designed to be done at night. So there's actually guidelines in there. It's a program that you use during the day when you're awake to learn about skills that you can use at night. We know that staying up late on your screens at night leads to later bedtimes, and that's definitely not what we're trying to not encourage here. So there is actually some psychoeducation in the app about not using your devices late at night. In terms of the school ban, I guess it's not black and white. It really depends on how young people are using their phones during school hours. We've got some kind of inconsistency across the country around governments who are banning them in some states but not in others. And again, it's different in the independent sector. I think we need to look at how young people are using their phones, how screens in general can be used for educational purposes. I know a lot of parents are really concerned that if young people don't have access to their phones during school, what's going to happen after school when they come home? So it's sort of, if you make something more valuable or you take away the ability to use it, you kind of often get this rebound effect. And I think parents are feeling at the moment really unsure about how they're going to manage that. And I guess the other thing is that we do have iPads and laptops in the classroom already. And my perspective would be more about education around healthy patterns of screen use and ways that you can use it in an educational and productive way in classrooms, potentially rather than a blanket ban. But I think we are lacking evidence in this area, and that's something that we're certainly working on here at the Black Dog Institute in my research team, trying to profile and characterise different ways of using screens and devices and what impact that has on mental health. At the moment, we don't have a good understanding of how different ways of using technology can improve or be harmful for mental health, and that's something that my team are working on. I spend most of my time working on the Future Proofing study. It's an incredible study. It's a longitudinal cohort study of about 6,500 young people in Australia. And what that means is we're following up a national cohort of this size every year for 5 years. And so we have information on a broad range of topics. It is a mental health focused study, so we have a lot of information about well-being, anxiety, depression, distress, a whole range of mental health factors. But then we also have things like screen use, social media use, how much young people sleep each night, how well they get on with their families, how much time they spend interacting with their friends in person versus online. We've got information about their exercise. We've got information about how connected they feel to their peers at school, whether they've been bullied, how connected they feel to their teachers. We have such a huge, rich, comprehensive data set for a contemporary sample of young people, which is actually not available in Australia. And so by following these young people up over 5 years, we're going to be able to ask questions like, is spending X many hours on Instagram and Snapchat predictive of the onset of mental health problems? Or is spending time online before going to bed resulting in reduced sleep over time? How does that relate to educational outcomes? How does that relate to school attendance? We're going to be able to ask all of these questions. How does it relate to mental health and so on? Do people who have mental health problems, are they more likely to spend more time on screens? And what are they doing on the screens? Are they looking for support? Are they accessing help? Are they connecting with networks that are supporting them? Or are they finding, mental health misinformation that potentially could be exacerbating what they're experiencing? So we're going to be able to answer all of these questions. We're about halfway through the study, so we've still got a few years of data collection to go, but we're going to be starting to, we've got some really exciting early findings that we're going to be starting to release over the next few months. So, reach out to us. We have a lot of volunteer opportunities. We're always happy to speak to you, provide more information. Of course, we welcome, we're currently looking to continue funding the Future Proofing study, so we're always interested in people who are willing to continue funding what will be one of the most important data sets of adolescents in Australia today. Jump on the website, have a look. You can have a look on my page and look at all of the kind of different research studies and infographics and stuff coming out of the work that I'm doing if you're interested. What I would really like to say is, if these issues concern you, if you are interested in the effect of screens on mental health, if you have a young person in your life and you want to understand more about the effects of how they spend their time, whether they might not get enough sleep, whether you're concerned about their friendships or their mental health, there are so many resources available. We have so many apps available. Please jump onto our website and have a look. There are so many ways that you can support our team here at the Black Dog Institute trying to find the answers to support the next generation of young people.